On this Community Wednesday, we'll be doing another rating subscriber build. This time, it's a Modern Warfare AK-47. When I saw this build, I was a bit surprised to see how close it was to my own. When I saw that there was only one attachment difference, I was tempted to just test for the stats that it said was different between that one attachment, but knowing Warzone, I tested every single stat because you never know, and Warzone's gonna Warzone. And I'm glad I did because this single attachment changed up the feel of the entire gun and made it actually fit into its intended role. So let's get into the build. The build consists of the monolithic suppressor, the 23-inch Romanian, tac laser, VLK, and 75 round drum mag. The difference between my build and this is that I use a 40 round mag instead of the 75. All the attachments, except for the magazine, are considered meta for this build. So it's a typical long-range AK-47, either helping with range, velocity, recoil control, or stabilization. And I'm guessing the 75 round drum mag was so that he could play more as an LMG, or just be able to confidently challenge a whole team by himself. Because our builds are so similar, I decided to put both the stats of this build and my own so you can see exactly how different they are and how it impacts the score. Which means you can actually treat this episode like a full-on stat guide. So let's get into the stats, starting with mobility. Its ADS time is 360 milliseconds, which is a lot, but when you compare it to LMGs, and you should be with this build, it is much faster, but when you compare it to my build, it is substantially slower, but it should be because it has a much larger ammo capacity. Its reload time isn't the greatest when you reload from empty, but you should always reload with one bullet left at least in your mag because you'll get 2.6 seconds, which is great for even a 60 round mag. Compared to my build, this is actually pretty good because it's only 0.5 seconds more and you get a lot more ammunition. The magazine cap, although I've already talked about it, it's 75 and that's a lot more than 40 in my own. Now, a huge difference comes when we look at movement and sprint speed. With the 40 round mag, it gets pretty normal numbers for an assault rifle, but as soon as we put on the 75 round mag, it gets speeds slightly faster than the MG34. Its ADS strafe speed though, there's basically no difference. Either way, you get around 1.6 meters per second. And its sprint out and tac sprint out are exactly the same at 250 milliseconds and 390 milliseconds. Both their stabilities are 1.5T, so that's really good. And its bullet velocity is 1,250 meters per second, which is really great for engaging long-range targets. Its rate of fire though is 9.08 rounds per second, or 545 rounds per minute. This is a very unforgiving and slow fire rate, so don't miss your shots. So when we add up the mobility points, our 75 round AK-47 gives us a mobility score of 28, and our 40 round gives us a mobility score of 32. When we get into recoil though, things get a little bit interesting. I expected these two builds to have the same recoil, but I was wrong. With the 75 round drum mag, its first few shots are a bit erratic, but it quickly recovers and gives you a very consistent, easy to control pattern. The 40 round mag has a lot more vertical recoil within the first 4 shots, just like the 75 round mag. But when you compare the two, you can see that the magnitude of recoil is a lot greater in this pattern than the other. So this means when using the 75 round drum, you can actually comfortably engage targets at a longer distance than with the 40 round mag. So the 75 round drum gets a score of 38 and the 40 round gets a 36. Thankfully, both their damage profiles are identical. So up close, we don't get the greatest time to kill, except for when we're getting upper torso shots. If you want to remain competitive, you're going to avoid lower torso and limb shots, so get as many upper torso and head shots as you can. Just don't miss. At longer ranges though, its head and upper torso will give you an amazing time to kill, and even its lower torso and limb shots are still great compared to other long-range weapons. I'm assuming its trade-off is its extremely low rate of fire, because every shot you miss will increase its TTK dramatically. Although, the AMAX exists, and it has better mobility and better recoil, and still, it has a better TTK, so I honestly have no idea. So since they're identical, both builds get a damage score of 52.5. Now when we add up all the categories, the 40 round version gets a score of 120.5 and the 75 round version gets a score of 118.5. These aren't the highest scores, but they are pretty average for long-range builds, and it shows that even though one's more versatile and another one is more specialized, they still get pretty close scores. I won't talk about the 40 round version anymore because it's just a long range, low fire rate assault rifle and you treat it like one. So let's talk about the 75 round version and how to use it. Basically, you gotta treat it as an LMG, not an assault rifle. Its movement and sprint speeds are not very good, so you're gonna be wanting to run around the map with a pistol or an SMG. But when you see an enemy and you swap to it, if they're using an LMG or a sniper rifle, your ADS time is gonna be much better. And the nice thing about a 75 round mag is that if you see a team out in the open, you can take them all out by yourself without letting go of the trigger. And if you mount, you'll basically feel like you don't have to compensate for the first few shots. You'll just be able to start beaming people right away. With its stability, bullet velocity, and recoil, assuming we ignore the first 4 shots, you can actually comfortably take out targets at 200 meters. You won't be doing it if they're head glitching, but out in the open, it'll be pretty easy. Sadly though, as much as I actually love using this build for the AK-47, it just doesn't perform that well when compared to other LMGs. When we compare it to LMGs like the Stoner or the PKM, its TTK just can't really compete. At longer ranges, it can try to remain relevant, but at close range, it just gets destroyed. And the trade-off just seems to be a slower ADS time and a slower reload time because the movement speeds are pretty similar. Not to mention those other LMGs have a much higher fire rate. Don't get me wrong, it's a fun gun to use, but it takes a little more skill to use than something like an LMG, and if you don't have the skill to use it, you're gonna find yourself losing a lot of gunfights. And even if you have the skill, if you're facing an equally skilled or better skilled opponent, you're still gonna lose. When Infinity Ward originally designed and balanced these attachments, I'm sure they had only multiplayer in mind, players with 100 HP. But when Warzone came along, they didn't really touch a lot of these attachments, and because of that, they're just unbalanced. So if I were Raven, I would buff this attachment's movement and sprint speeds because it would still have the same ADS, but now you wouldn't have to swap from another weapon, saving you a lot of time. So if you were running around with this and see a target at medium to long range, then you can immediately start ADSing, while they would probably have to swap to the longer range weapon. And even if they had a better TTK, that still takes time. But even in this state, what do I think about this build? Honestly, I've said it before, but I love it. It's great. It's a fresh new way to experience this weapon. It's not the best weapon, but it's a lot of fun to use. And I'm gonna be honest, I had a lot of fun filming this video. But it's also not the worst weapon or even a bad gun. It's pretty average, I'd say. So, especially in our current meta where a lot of things are viable, it's a perfect time to try it out if you haven't already. Just remember to stick to medium to long range and you'll be good. And even at closer ranges, if you hit every shot and you catch the enemy off guard, you probably still can win a lot of those gunfights. But that's Haters LMG 47. What do you think about it, and would you consider running it? And do you think that its larger mag and better recoil make up for its lack of mobility when compared to the 40 round version? Be sure to let me know. And if you have any question, topic, or idea you want me to cover, let me know on here or on Instagram, and you may see it on the next Community Wednesday. But that's the video. If you enjoyed it or it's helped you in any way, let me know by leaving a like. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down in the comments section down below. And if you want to make sure that you never miss another video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.